All right, welcome back, everybody, to the ATB NFL Live Show. Right off the bat, let's just address the fact that there's two of us here. Our normal third wheel here, it's like to call him. Zach is unfortunately leaving us in the dust, or really the sand, while he goes to the beach this week. But we didn't want to miss another show after last week got all messed up. I had stuff going on, Tony had stuff going on. So unfortunately, Zach won't be here, but I don't think he minds too much considering where he is. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I personally would prefer to be at a beach. As much as I love coming on and,
Yeah,
and talking
I
football with
won't
you
blame
and,
you.
and
Yeah.
talking football to all of you listening, I would rather be at the beach. I think
Yeah,
that's just a universal human
yeah,
concept.
I can't really blame anyone for that. I know there's some people out there that probably would rather be here doing this, but maybe if it was their like true job, we'd be talking about that differently. But no, Zach gets a
Yeah.
week off. Well, really 2 weeks off because of last week, and we'll hopefully have him back for the next round of this. So, but moving forward, we do have the NFC West on dock for today, Tony, and definitely an interesting division. Historically, one of the better ones usually in the NFL last couple of years, but this year's going to be kind of similar last year, where there's some probably bottoming out for some teams and two other teams kind of fighting for supremacy in the division and really the NFC as well. So definitely fun to talk about both because there's really like a weird divide between the bottom two and top two in terms of where they're at right now. And that's always fun in a division where you get to talk about two completely different styles of both play and also where they're at in the league. So
Yeah, you have a lot of different just trajectories going on in this division,
yes,
and it makes
for
it
sure.
really, really fun to look at.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. But real quick, we're not a lot going on in the NFL right now. Obviously, we're a little bit about a week out from most camps starting, or about 2 weeks out for some other ones starting as well. But because of that, not a lot going on. But there is a kind of a big deal in terms of future for one team in particular that we already talked about during our AFC South breakdown. Uh, Jaguars do extend Evan Ingram after a career season with them for 3 years. I believe it was 43.25 million. Was that right, or is it 42.25?
Yeah, and it was effectively a 2 year extension on
Yes,
top of the
franchise tag.
franchise tag that
Yeah,
comes out to like just a hair under 30 million in new money.
right. And that's for him really good deal after a career year with Jaguars. Really put it all together for them. Production was still not insane or anything like that for a tight end and an offense that had Christian Kirk really break out for them, and Zay Jones is really good. It's a very good deal for him, and I think for both sides because it allows Trevor to continue to build confidence with all those guys, and you add Calvin Ridley to the mix. It's going to be real interesting, that passing game, how high they can rank by the end of the year, not just passing yards but efficiency, touchdowns, things like that. So good deal for both
Yeah,
sides. I
and
think that's what I would say. Go ahead, Tony.
yeah, and just because of who the coach is, tight ends matter
Yes,
so much more to that
they
team.
do.
So like,
It's
yes,
true.
you're extending, you're maintaining one of the young, really good targets for Trevor Lawrence, but what Doug Peterson can do with tight ends in his offense is really, really impressive stuff. Makes life easier on Lawrence. And when you have Evan Ingram, you only have to find one more guy to get the two tight end thing going. And I think they have that in Brenton Strange, their second round pick. So I know we talked about the team. We're obviously both pretty excited about what they can be this
Yes.
year, but this was a very, very good move from them to lock up a piece of the offense who is going to matter for the next few years.
Yeah, and a lot of people look at it and say tight end. Like he's really not a tight end, and a lot of tight ends are like that, right? But
Yeah.
for what he does for them, and like you said, they do draft Brenton Strange high, and I think there's a reason for that. I think they want to be able to go to two tight end looks more and not have Evan Ingram be really a true tight end a lot of the time. Kind of similar to what the Steelers did by drafting Darnell Washington to
Yeah.
allow Pat Fryermuth to play. Obviously bringing it back to the Steelers, but a similar situation where Pat's a better blocker than Ingram, but it's not his forte at this point in his career, in my opinion. So allowing him to not have to carry that load as much if you don't want him to. Same thing with Ingram. He could block on the move a little bit, but he can play a true, flexed out tight end position full time. And you hope that Strange can be that true like wide tight end for them. So, but it's really the only other major thing that's going on in the NFL right now. So we'll get right into our NFC West preview. We're going to start in reverse order of record as always, and it's probably going to be the same, we assume, this year. Maybe Tony. We'll talk about that more. I think there's the
I
bottom
think
team
so.
could switch, but we'll see. So start with the Cardinals. So their offseason was certainly interesting. Um, their season last year was also very interesting. A lot of good, a lot of bad. So obviously last season, they bottomed out. Kyler Murray gets hurt. The receiving core was weird because of Hopkins missing time. Putting out a bunch of guys about my height, which is not good.
They
Definitely don't.
traded for Hollywood Brown going into the season too.
Exactly. So
Forgot
they
that was part of
really,
that.
yeah, they really leaned into the like our receivers don't need to be taller than the average man in the United States, like, which again, with Kyler, it kind of
I'm not
fits.
either.
Right?
Sign me,
Exactly. Right.
please.
Exactly. So I'm not. So like I fit the mold clearly. Maybe about 200 pounds more than I need to be, but that's beside the point. But they really leaned into that, and like it. The problem with it ultimately, right, is that when you have a short quarterback, short receivers, you're limited on the types of ways you can win, right? That's just what it comes down to. So once Hopkins came back, you were expecting it to get a little bit better, but it just kind of ran its course with Cliff Kingsbury, and we kind of knew going into the season that despite the extension and everything that happened before that, this team just fell apart late in seasons, and I think a lot of that was just coaching and not being able to win when it mattered. And some of it did go to Murray not playing as well in the back half of the seasons as he did in the first half. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the last couple of years in the MVP conversation through like 10, 11 games every year. And then it just kind of starts to fall off a little bit. And this needed to happen, right? This blow up, everything that happened last year, it was necessary if they want to get to where they want to go. But it now creates a lot of question marks. What happens with Kyler Murray? And we're going to talk about that with strengths, weaknesses. But, what does he look like when he does come back? Is this an offense that he can be even better in than he's been in Cliff Kingsbury's offense that did get stale? What's the direction defensively? Because right now there really doesn't seem to be one, right? Like we kind of know what, new head coach Jonathan Gannon brought over from the Eagles. He's a guy that kind of got criticized at times for his lack of creativity and more so just playing straight up his coverage and his scheme, which is fine. But with this team, you're not going to have the the personnel that he had with the Eagles. So he's going to have to show a lot more creativity, a lot more willingness to do different things. So just a lot of question marks overall with this team.
Yeah, this is just a team without direction.
Right now, at least.
It was so hard to find a spot where like what did I want to start talking about with this team, because like there's just so much going on. So I think starting with the quarterback situation, because that's really where it's possible to have an optimistic view of the future of this team. It's possible to have a pessimistic view. I think it all starts with the quarterback position. I think Kyler Murray's never playing for this team again.
You talked about that, yeah.
I've talked about this before. Like he tore his ACL very late into the season. I think that the recovery, he can say he's on track, wanting to start week 1 all he wants to. It's not going to happen. He's not starting week 1.
Yeah.
He could come back sooner than I'm expecting, which is, never. But I do think that it's going to eat up a decent chunk of his season. And I think they're going to be so far gone at that point that what's the point? Like, they're not going to want to plug him in, risk his injury, and accidentally win games. He's not going to want to go in and sacrifice his body for a team that he's already kind of had some weird drama with, and they're not good. And so, like, what's the point there? So I don't think he's going to play. And that leads me to my, like, what I think this season's going to be is there's not a lot of analysis necessary here. This is one of the worst rosters in the NFL in the last, like, 10 years. If you don't have Kyler Murray, I think it is firmly the worst roster in the NFL over the past 10 years. And who knows what Kyler could do if he even showed up to play. But offensively, you know that they're just building the boat out of small guys, which is great until it's late in the season and they're all injured because they're small guys.
Yeah.
They spent a premium pick on a backup tight end last year. Trey McBride has to be like a focal point of the offense at this point with DeAndre Hopkins gone. Their offensive line is nothing special. Like I don't feel good about it. And it's thin too. So like even the starters you have, like if they're average, the bottom falls out really quickly on you. Paris Johnson, I think, is a stud, and like he's the one bright spot on that offensive line. He's the one guy you feel really good about going forward. Everybody else is pretty much trash in terms of the 3-year outlook. Defensively, Jonathan Gannon gonna have to learn how to scheme up some fastball, because like you nailed it. He did great with great personnel. He didn't have to do much creativity wise. Like he just let his guys go play.
Did not like to blitz, did not like to gamble. And again, exactly. and you can get away with that when your team is really good, when you have the pass rushing talent that they had, when you have the secondary that they had. The question with him is going to be, can he be he's going to have to be a good CEO type coach, right? He's going to have to be really good at handling people, making the right decisions at the right times. but he also does, if he's going to run this defense, which we expect him to, he has to understand that this is not the Philadelphia Eagles defense. This is not a
Not at all.
team that has the pass rush talent, has the secondary talent. I mean, there's players on this team that have the physical gifts that you want to have to mold into, but we've seen that they cannot mold these guys. Isaiah Simmons, what is he going to be? The nickel this year is what he's listed at right now. You know,
I think that's the position he plays in the NFL now. Like he
I
finally
think
found a spot that he's
right, and
good.
it's like that's good, but like if you drafted him very high,
Yeah,
it's
ninth
just
overall for a
it's for the
nickel.
nickelback. Like if he can't do multiple things well, which again is hard to ask a player. There's a reason why Minka Fitzpatrick is a Steeler right now is because the Dolphins couldn't figure out exactly where to play him, right? And it worked out for them with Holland, but like that's the type of if you're gonna take a player that high that you take because of what you think he can do versatility wise, if he ends up only being able to play nickel, that's just a bad draft pick. You look at
Zaven Collins,
Zayvon
another
Collins.
first round linebacker who, is he switching positions this
Yeah, is he
offseason?
playing
He's
edge now
playing edge.
apparently?
Like,
And
what the
like
hell?
it's really, and obviously you can't put all that on this regime now because that was the previous regime with Steve Keim. But they have to figure out, can we salvage any of these players that have the physical gifts but don't have position in the NFL right now that they've played well at, right? Like if they think Zayvon Collins is better at edge, that's great. How good is he going to be? I mean, we've seen teams try to do this now because Micah Parsons popped off, right? And now it feels like people are chasing that, like guys with physical gifts to rush the passer that played inside linebacker, and it's not going to always work like that, right? Michael Parsons is not the role; he's the exception, right? Similar
Yeah.
to the whole like Josh Allen, take the guy that can't play yet, but he's real talented. Like it's not a guarantee that this is going to happen, right? So that's really questionable. The whole secondary outside of like the safeties are good. I like the safeties.
The safeties are good, but you have to trade Budda Baker.
You
Like,
do.
he
That's
does
the
not
problem,
belong on this team.
right? Like he cannot. You can't justify in a season like this for a player who's not like it's not like he's old or anything, but he's not. Just at the start of his career at this point, right? This is a guy that if you're going to be good in 3 years, will he still probably be a good player? Yes. Will he be as good of a player? Maybe. It just feels like the timeline for him, like you said, is not. This is the last trade piece that you definitely have to move, right? That
Yeah.
and Kyler possibly, depending on how the season goes. We'll talk more about that, but it's just the main thing I can start with and say is like the strengths of this team is technically quarterback when healthy, if Kyler's healthy, compared to the rest
And
of the
even
roster,
that's arguable
especially.
some days.
Right,
Some days.
exactly. And that just more so because of the strength of the roster. Safety, I like the tight end group, of course, with Ertz and McBride, and then maybe if Johnson plays tackle year one and Humphreys is good, maybe tackle. Like maybe it's just it's really based on because obviously Beecham might be the starter still, and then Paris moves inside for his rookie year, which that's probably the best offensive line they can put out year one, but that's beside the point. It's just the lack of strengths is glaring, and the weaknesses quarterback without Murray, especially corner, inside linebacker, interior defensive line, edge. Basically the entire defense outside of their safeties is one gigantic question mark, right? And that's being nice. Let's just be honest about that, calling it a
Oh, that's
question
being
mark.
very nice. That's being
And I
generous.
say that because like we don't know what the scheme will look like exactly. We don't know what they'll be able to do with Cam. But like you look at the talent and you're like, oh, I don't know how you hold up, even in an NFC that doesn't have the strongest quarterback play. This secondary is really going to be teetering every single play. It feels like at any moment things could go wrong. And again, like there's not a lot else to talk about. I mean, the positives I had is maybe a Caleb Williams Marvin Harrison Jr. combo at pick one and
Yeah,
two if the Texans are as bad as they could be. Like
that is legitimately the
yeah,
positive here is that this roster is built perfectly for what is best for Arizona.
yeah,
Like
it is.
nobody
It
wants
is.
what nobody wants the season that's about to happen, but
But
the assets and the roster are built perfectly to go out and execute. So you
Mhm.
like at least there's a light. I was a Bills. I've always been a Bills fan, but I was the Bills fan through the 17-year playoff drought when they just continuously chased mediocrity. This is why I hate chasing
Yeah.
mediocrity. They would go 6-10 every season and never suck bad enough to
To go
get
get that
out of
top
it,
guy. Yeah.
but it was painful the entire time. So it's going to be painful no matter what. At least you are set up to get out of it really quickly. And
Yes.
like I think your GM's a really good hire. Like he seems to be doing really good things so far.
He
So
does. I love
there's
the draft this year, so yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 2024 and beyond is the reason for optimism. There's nothing optimistic about this season.
Yeah. So I think the biggest question for this team, and one of the other positives, is we talked about the new GM, Austin Ford. What he did in the draft, not only getting Paris Johnson after moving down and then back up, getting the Texans' first round pick, which is still crazy to me. We talked about it. It's insane. I mean, good for I guess, respect for the Texans thinking they're going to be better than the Browns, but like you're really trying to climb the ladder there. Beside the point. Um, Murray should at least be a good trade piece if they are as bad as we expect them to be, and they can
He's
move
a
on.
guy who will still fetch 2 to 3 firsts.
Because
Yes.
again, this is a young player that has flashed MVP like upside in terms of statistically, at least production in the past. And I really do still view him very highly as a player in the right scheme, in the right situation. One of the most physically gifted players at the position for sure, as a passer and as a runner, right?
Agreed.
Cannot deny that. We want to see what he looks like post ACL, but again, ACLs at this point for most players are not anything close to a career ender, so I'm not super worried about that. But he should be able to fetch really solid trade assets for some team. And there's multiple teams going into next year that are going to have question marks at quarterback, but probably don't have the draft capital to go get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May or some of these guys. So that might be their answers. Go get Kyler Murray. So if you do decide you're going to move on from him, he should at least be a good trade piece. And you can have plenty of young guys getting snaps this year by default, pretty much. Whether it's Ojulari, the edge rusher, you expect him to start.
I am excited about BJ Ojulari.
Exactly. Who else is going to play? Paris Johnson obviously is going to be a starter at either tackle or guard. Again, I still think if they're trying to actually put the best line out, probably have him inside. So that would Beachum, who's still a really good player at this point in his career, amazingly, former Steeler. You could have him start still and then have Humphries on the left side. But whatever they do with him, he's going to be playing. Garrett Williams, you hope, can get healthy at some point this year, after the ACL injury, and he can play at some point at least. I'm not sure if he's going to be healthy to start the year or not at this point. But in general, there's going to be a lot of young guys who are going to get snaps for this team, and you hope that they can be part of the building blocks that propel you 2024 and beyond into being in contention again. If you can either figure out quarterback, whether it's Murray or Williams or whoever, and you get some other premium talent again. A 1-2 punch of Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. would be hilarious for this team to be able to get, like, just ridiculous
draft.
Yeah, it's just like if you draft those two, you're done. You can just call it in, like phone it in, just let someone else make the picks at that point. We'll see if that happens. Obviously, I think it's unlikely that they get 1 and 2 just because every year that things can happen. I think the Texans might at least be closer to 5 than 2, hopefully for them. But still, you're going to have 2 premium picks pretty much guaranteed next year on top of other assets you have. So really good job by them.
Yeah, and we'd mentioned trade pieces for them, and Budda Baker does stand out as the one. But I wouldn't be surprised if come August, if there are some injuries on contending teams, if these tackles start flying off of their roster.
It's certainly possible.
They have 3. I guess they have 4 guys I'd feel comfortable starting at a position to get by, DJ Humphries, Kelvin Beachum, Josh Jones, who is good on a rookie deal,
a good player. Yeah.
And then Paris Johnson Jr., obviously your first round pick, 6th overall or something. Dennis Daly is terrible, but I would want him starting on this Arizona Cardinals team personally. I would trade away whoever gets me the biggest value out of Kelvin Beachum or DJ Humphries. I would trade that guy away. I might even trade away both of them. Roll with Paris Johnson, Josh Jones, and then Dennis Daly backing him up at swing tackle.
Again, it's possible that they could look to do something like that if, again, the opportunity presents itself where, okay, you can get an actual asset for, especially, Beachum probably not because of his age and things, but
yeah.
Humphrey
he was out there on the market and came back to them. So.
It's just because, again, he's still a good player, but you always wonder, is the cliff going to happen? Is he going to look down the cliffs there at that point? It's always possible. So you hope that, again, they can get some trade assets, even more so for the future as well, to kind of build around whoever ends up being the quarterback. Again, we'll see what that happens. I think that with Murray, the question is going to be, when is he healthy? When is he actually clear to play and feel comfortable playing? What does their season look like at that point? And then does he want to play and does the team want him to play? Because if those 2 things don't line up too, he's going to be out the door probably at the end of the season. Whether that means, they trade him. Even I doubt this would happen, but it'd be kind of funny if he gets cleared to play like right before the trade deadline, and a desperate team is like, hey, let's get ahead of the curve and let's see if we can throw out an offer right now for him, even if he doesn't play this year for us, or if we can slot him in. Like something like that is possible, I'm sure.
That's an interesting idea.
I think they'd want to see him like it might be a good idea for a team that's willing to do it anyway if they know like, okay, we kind of know that this is somebody we want to target in the offseason. Let's get him for this season and see if we can get him on the field a little bit and just kind of see where he's at. That could be an option. I doubt it. I still think it's more of an off season in 2024, like after the season situation. But hey, if he's healthy and they're just not playing him, might be possible because you're not going to know any more information anyway. Might as well pull the trigger if you know you want to go after him. So.
I personally would be just a ball of anxiety if I were the GM and I was I know my team is going to get the first overall pick and we're going to get another top 5 pick, but until I see that locked in, trading away Kyler Murray would scare the hell out of me.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, it would have to be a situation where like you kind of like you're already on that trajectory and you're not going to play him. It might make sense if a team really wants to just jump in and give you the offer you want anyway, which probably wouldn't happen at the deadline. You wouldn't want to extend that into the offseason, get a bidding war going, but we'll see how that all plays out. But I think last thing, negatives, everything else except for the positive.
All of it. Including your owner. Like, we're talking about how there's optimism, but they are like the players voted them to be the worst 4 players like in the entire league. So that I don't know how punishing that is long term, but that sucks.
It's not great. Yeah, Bidwell's not great. Let me put it that way. Predictions. So I'll just start here. 2-15 is very much on the table. I'm not going to say less than that just because I feel like projecting that is too much of an ask to like be like we've seen 0-17 teams or 0-16 teams. We've seen that. Like, could this team do it if Murray doesn't step on the field? Sure, because the NFL is tough. But the NFC is just like it's not top heavy enough for me to see like that they couldn't beat a team or two, especially because they do play another team in their division who's also going to be in the situation. So it's hard for me to pick them not to win a game. So I'll put 2-15. And then this is a situation, I'll say if Kyler Murray plays like if he is right and he's like, I'm week 1, we're going, I'm trying to figure this out. They could win like maybe 5 games if he starts the whole year and plays good. Like 5 or 6, and again, that's because the NFC is not super strong. Murray's a good player. They might be able to figure some stuff out offensively, but that's still asking probably a lot, even if they're playing.
Yeah, I'll do what you were unwilling to do because I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying what is in the realm of possibilities.
Yeah.
0-17 firmly on the table.
It could happen. It could happen. It could. I hate to say that, Cardinals. But it's totally possible. It is.
I love to say it because it is for the good
of the
Arizona Cardinals
I would want to be 1-16 if I could.
Yeah, that'd be better.
Just because you can say you weren't like a worse Browns or something, but like still, it's fine.
Yeah, I almost think their biggest hope at getting a win in general is just surprising Washington week 1.
Honestly, that's like one of their 3 best opportunities of the season.
Like throw Clayton Tune out there and let her rip. I think they can go 0-17. I think they can. You nailed their ceiling. I think it's 5 or 6 wins. Even if Kyler Murray plays a majority of the season at full strength, I don't think the roster around him is competitive enough to win more than a couple games out of that anyways.
Yeah, and I don't want to disrespect Colt McCoy because he has made himself a career. But
I admire Colt McCoy. I don't think he should be willing to play on this team.
No, I don't think so because like he's not like even if he's his best case scenario is he's actually kind of good and then they hate him because they win like 4 games. Like his upside is to be kind of looked at as a reason they don't get a top player possibly. So it's like
best case scenario is they all hate him.
Right. It's like and then worst case scenario he just looks bad and you're like Colt McCoy get out of here and he's like what the but whatever. Moving on to the Rams next. So again, very similar conversation needs to be had. Now, the difference I think between these two teams ultimately is we know about the coaching, right? Like we know what to expect from the coaching staff, and there's a couple more legitimate like star level players, right there. But again, it's just a worse version of what they did in the Super Bowl, which is have a ton of star players and have enough behind them to go on a run, but now they don't have the stuff behind them, right? They just have a couple of those star players, and one of them might not even really play that much at this point for the rest of his career, possibly. Another one did miss a lot of last year because of injuries, and one is threatened to retire, essentially, is at least as far as we could tell, like maybe thought about retiring a couple different times. it all comes down to, is Stafford a healthy Stafford this year? If he's healthy and he's committed to playing and he's motivated to play, it does change the potential for this team a little bit, but it's still a team that just lacks pretty much everywhere. There's a reason why they made 15 draft picks, and if you go to their RLads
Signed
page,
26
right?
undrafted free
Yes,
agents.
if you go to their RLads page, half of their roster is green, which means the rookies. It's just it's a bit of a mismatch of just all this different talent, and you hope that they hit on at least half of those guys, and if they do, then that's really going to be a nice way to kickstart this rebuild they're doing. But they still have again, the problem is they have Stafford, they have Cup, they have Aaron Donald. They have a few key core players from that run in 2021 that you just don't know what to do with at this point, because again, if Stafford plays the whole year, all that's going to happen is they're probably going to be just good enough to not be in that top 5 category pick wise. And I don't know if they want to be that, obviously. I think McVay sticking around does kind of change that, because if he would have left, maybe they do go full we don't want to win a game next year. But I think because the coaching staff is still in place and they still have their star players, they feel obligated to try to, while doing things they have to, they had to make those draft picks. They had no other way to fill out the roster. But they're going to not purposely lose, or even, not that we don't like to say teams tank on purpose, but we know when they do, right? Cardinals doing it. But the Rams, I think, are in a weird middle area where even if they try to win, they probably won't. But is it going to be just enough to get them outside the top 5? What do you kind of think overall with this team, Tony?
I am much more optimistic about this team, and I don't know why. It's a struggle. It really is. I think part of it is that I am very I fall to recency bias all the time, right? And just this past week, I listened to the incredible podcast series put together by Jordan Rodriguez at the Athletic.
Yes.
The play callers, just a bunch of interviews and storytelling of the Shanahan tree and how it has come together and developed, and a lot of really cool insights into all those coaches. And Sean McVay specifically, just the fact that he didn't walk away, and this was a big point towards the end of the series, but the fact that he didn't walk away tells me that he's going to be in his bag this season when it comes to play calling. I think you definitely could see the play calling aspect once the injuries were there and he kind of knew the ship was sinking. You could see him he wasn't there. The same creativity, in-game adaptation, none of that was really happening at the same rate that we're expecting to see out of Sean McVay. And then towards the end of the season, he kicked it back into gear. Those Baker games, specifically, I just watched earlier today the condensed version of the Seattle Los Angeles Week 18 game. Seattle had to get the overtime win to get into the play, or to allow the Lions to put them into the playoffs. The Rams, that offense was called in a very, very fun way, and they attacked, and they did not have good players, and they took them to overtime. I think that there is an upside case because this team still has the stars that were the stars that mattered a couple of years ago, and their whole philosophy has always been just get average production out of the rest and throw a lot of darts to try to get there. The upside case, I think this team can win 9 games if it all comes together. I think they will win 5 or 6 games, but I think they can win 9 games, and it's purely because of the Stars and Scrubs methodology has worked for them before. The stars are still stars, and their play caller, I think, has a renewed focus, and he might be deeper into his bag than he has ever been before.
Yeah, and I think the case can be made for that. I think for me, the ultimate issue with it is outside of Aaron Donald and maybe Jordan Fuller, depending on how you feel about him, I struggle to find players on defense that I can reliably say are going to do literally anything.
Oh yeah, they're winning shootouts in this scenario.
And that's my issue. Is if Stafford's healthy and Cooper Kupp is healthy, the offense will be at least good. I don't know if it's going to be close to the heights that it reached in 2021, or even in the past with him. But it's going to be good if those two players are healthy. They can figure out the rest around. And obviously the offensive line has to show up to the table a little bit this year more
has
as well.
To come together, has to get healthy.
And it doesn't have to be great, but it has to allow him to not die, right? Stafford can't be killed back there like he was last season before he got hurt.
Yeah.
there's just a lot of moving pieces to the point where, like, not only because of all the new faces, but because so much is hinging on, does Stafford play a full season or 12 games or 15 games? Like, because listen, if Stetson Bennett has to play quarterback for this team, will it be hilarious to a certain degree for me? Yes. Will they win games? No, I don't think they will. I love McVay. I don't think they're going to win like very many, if any, games if Stafford doesn't play. And it's just what it comes down. I mean, as much as quarterback play for Shanahan schemes is not quite as important as it is for other schemes, the difference between a healthy Stafford and a rookie quarterback that's 32 years old, is
I,
substantial to
I,
me. But
I do think the quarterback thing matters more in McVay's offense than it does in
it does.
Shanahan's
Well,
offense.
I mean, every version of the Shanahan offense is still
Yeah.
more than Kyle's, but yeah.
But yeah, like specifically with McVay, he's built the boat around his quarterback being able to do certain things because he had a quarterback who wasn't able to do certain things, and he didn't like how stifled that felt.
Yes, exactly.
And so he was like, I'm designing shit for good quarterbacks.
Right. So that's what it comes down to. Is I think, like you said, the upside case for this team, if everyone's healthy, is there because, again, McVay can call the hell out of an offense. He's done it before. He'll probably do it this year to some degree, no matter what. It's just, can the offensive line, especially, and can the defense come to play enough times to give them a shot to win games? I think that this team could be one of the three worst teams in the NFL if everything goes awry. But like you said, I think that they could be at least semi-competitive for most of the year if things do go well. So they do have a pretty tight, not tight, a pretty wide range of potential outcomes because of that. But I just don't think I can assume Stafford plays more than half the season at this point, right? And I hate that because I love Matthew Stafford. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks for the past 12 years or how long he's been playing now, 14 I think now. But it's hard for me to assume he's going to get healthier at this point in his career. And if he does, though, I'll be watching these games. I want to see him play. I want to see Cooper Kupp and him play. Like, I want to see it. It's hard for me to assume it. And like the weaknesses again with this team, offensive line, edge, corner, linebackers, like it goes on, right? Like it just goes on.
They're weak at the stuff that matters. Like,
right. And it sucks. It sucks for them because some of the rookies could end up being good even as rookies, right? Because they have so many, but you'd have to project almost all of the at least semi-premium picks to hit year one for this defense to not just be bad. Like they'd have to all hit kind of. And like the corner room, like Akella Witherspoon was a big addition to this corner room. And it's talking about somebody who I know well, unfortunately. He's going to probably play 9 games and 4 of them are going to be good, right? So like, and that was a big addition to the corner room. So that
was a big addition in like late June.
Right, exactly.
He could have been had by anybody.
Exactly. Like that's kind of my point. Is like it's just so hard to predict this defense to be good enough to allow them to be in a lot of games, unless again Stafford and Kupp are like 2021 Stafford and Kupp, which is possible. But do you want to project it? So let's get to predictions here. I don't want to spend too much time on this team since we already spent a lot of time on the Cardinals. Very similar in terms of where they're at as a team talent-wise. It's just they have more of the premium talent than the Cardinals. So I think they could be like 3-14. I think that's totally possible. I think they could be significantly worse even than last year. And that's really just about Stafford not playing much and the defense being Aaron Donald and everyone else, right? Like that's kind of what it comes down to. Like McVay could be in his bag all he wants. If this team doesn't have Stafford at quarterback and the defense is just as bad as I expect, you're just not going to win many games. You might beat the Cardinals twice or something because they're the Cardinals. You might steal a game from somebody because that's what they do. But that's what I could think. And then I think that, like you said, I'm more like a 7 or so win team, I think, if things go well. But I understand where you're coming from with the ceiling aspect of things.
Yeah, so I'm pretty in lockstep with you. I gave it one more on the floor. I threw 4 on there. That's while I agree, it's tough to predict Stafford to play an entire season. I think that of the games Stafford's plays, he should be able to win at least 4, and I think he'll play more than 4 games. And then we also know that McVay can get a win out of Stetson Bennett or. Right. Give him Kendall Hinton and he might do it one game.
Maybe.
I think Brett Rippon can do it. So
other quarterback right now. So
he's the other guy in the room with experience. Yeah. So I do think like things bottom out 4 wins, but I comfortably see them getting some wins even in that scenario.
Yeah, some wins are going to happen no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I said, my ceiling, I do think that they can get to 9-8. I think that is an incredibly unlikely tail outcome, but it's
Right.
possible just because they have the stars. I think they'll land. I said 5 or 6 earlier. I do think they'll get to 6 or 7 wins. I'll say 7 just because I'm being optimistic on them, and why not lean into that?
I think if I had to project, like, I would say 5 is my guess right now. And again, that's factoring in my expectation that Stafford plays no more than like half the season. And half the
Yeah,
season of Stafford probably gets you at least to 5 wins, like you said. Like I think that's enough to get you there. But yeah, it's just tough for these bottom two teams. But again, a lot of things to look out for, especially for the Cardinals. But the Rams also, their picks are back. They don't have their
yeah.
picks
The,
going
the
out
cupboard's
anymore.
restocked.
Yeah, they don't have
They
to worry about that.
something I really like. This might also be bleeding into why I have good
Okay.
feelings about the Rams this year.
Yeah.
Is that they put out Kevin Demoff put out this statement to their season ticket holders explaining their team building process and saying we were at a crossroads. Our decisions, our choices were to either continue leaning all in, knowing it would blow up and not work, blow it all up and restart, or take a step back this year, retool, and still have a chance to win with the core that we have now. And they're like, so we're taking a step back this year. The results might not be what we want, but we feel that this will allow us to compete with the core roster we have in place. And like, I respect that they know where they are in their cycle, that they were willing to admit that to their fans, and their self-awareness has me thinking that like things are going to be good for them long term.
Yeah. And I think the problem before we get to the Seahawks next, I think the thing with the Rams too is like I normally for a team in their position, I would want them to just blow it all up because the fact that they don't have much established talent except for their start guys. But what are you going to get for Stafford? What are you going to get for even Cup at this point? Right? Not anything. Not that Cup wouldn't command a lot, but he is a receiver on the other side of 30, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, I
And
think he
yeah,
just crossed the bit.
right,
Yeah,
30, 31. Like as talented as he is, he also is very specifically a great fit and one of the best receivers in the NFL when he's playing in a scheme like this. And then Aaron Donald, like, yeah, a team would be willing to give you probably a lot for Aaron Donald even at this point because it's Aaron Donald. But like, do you want to do that? Like, is that something you want to do to your fans for a guy who's going to be thought of as one of the best players maybe in the history of the sport? You want to offload him when he's still playing well? Like, I get why they're doing what they're doing. Let me put it that way. I have no qualms with the strategy here at all. I just wonder if it's going to really bottom out this year, or if it is more like we kind of thinking like 5, 6. Kind of just a similar season to last year's success wise at least. But moving on to the Seahawks here. Now this is where things start to get fun in terms of like winning games in 2023.
right.
First of all, hats off to the Seahawks right from last year, right? I'm sure some people were willing to put their neck out there and say, "Oh, you know what, the Seahawks are going to be fine. Russ is gone, that's fine." Like someone out there was doing that. Now, were they doing it because they actually believe that, or was it more of like, "Hey, let's see if that happens. I'll be right then" thing? Depends on who you are, but I don't think anybody was like, "Oh, Geno Smith, yeah, this is going to be great." Like,
I will say,
yeah,
I was on record, and this is not at all me saying that I like predicted their
right,
success. I
right,
did say though, similar to what I've said about like Jordan Love this year, I was like, Geno Smith in Shane Waldron's offense probably going to look a whole lot better than Russ did the year before.
well,
I
yeah,
did not expect
exactly.
them to
That's the
win all the
point.
games they won. I expected them to
No,
be like a firmly mediocre team at
right,
best.
right.
But I'm gonna pat myself on the back for at least saying Geno wasn't gonna be terrible.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think the thing too that people and I wanted to say this right off the bat because we're talking about a team that surprised so much last year. When Russ left, right? The expectation obviously for a lot of people because Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl quarterback. He's a quarterback that very easily could have been an MVP winner at different times in his career, has put up a ton of numbers. Russ is one of the most unique quarterbacks in NFL, in my opinion, and really NFL history because you talk about like system quarterbacks, and then Russ Wilson is literally a system as a quarterback. Like he is the system. And normally that is an awesome thing to say, right? But with him, it's a little bit limiting, actually. It's very weird.
Incredibly
Like
limiting.
it's very weird how like he just plays the game his way. And like it worked really well for a long time, but eventually it just wore its welcome out, and you could tell it his last year. And with the Broncos, like he's gonna have to buy into Sean Payton this year if he wants to kind of get back on track with his career. But like he is the unique, like, not a system quarterback, but he is the system. It's really weird. So like they needed to move on, and I think that they made the right decision. I was totally on board when they did it. It was just the fact that like, okay, this year might be rough, and then they were not. They were not rough. The defense obviously was still, it was pretty bad, but they got away with it, right? They were able to get, because of the offense, because of what Geno Smith is able to do, and these receivers who they added even more to in the draft, and we'll talk about that. Strengths for this team, right at the top, wide receiver. Holy hell! What, like, is, I wanted them to draft Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I did want them to do it. But when they actually did, it was like, there's no shot that they got away with this. Like, someone let them get away with this. Like,
wild.
What in the world? Yeah, what are we doing
fit
here? Like, what are we doing? Like, not even saying, like, I'm not even saying Jason is like a top 5 pick in the draft or anything crazy. Like, that's a huge steal. But letting the Seahawks get him at 20. Like, what are we doing here? What did the Seahawks need? Oh, they need a third receiver that can win in the intermediate and be the slot receiver. Oh, let's just get literally the premium guy for that possible. Like, literally the prototype for this player. Let's just give him that. Like, what is going on here? You're telling me no team was like, let's jump them for him. Just so like, I would have done just so they didn't get him. Like, what, like, if you're the Packers, right? Love Van Ness. I would have loved to see him in a Packers uniform. It'd be a great fit.
It would have been
right?
Such a great fit. Yeah.
Great fit. But they're like, we need more edge rush. I'm like, you know what? You're the Packers. I don't have any faith in you anyway. I don't care what you do. But like other teams, like, you can't let him go there, because this completes. Okay, the Bengals have the inroad to be the best trio because they've been it, right? And Jamar Chase is awesome. T. Higgins is awesome. Tyler Boyd is probably going to start slowing down at some point just because he's getting a little bit up there, but like, he's still a really good player. This is the challenger now for them. Like, this is the trio that, if everything goes right in his rookie season, they could be right up in that conversation. And you have that on a team that's building up the offensive line with the tackles. The interior is still a little bit iffy to me, but that's fine. Geno Smith, if he plays like he did last, he doesn't have to get any better. He just doesn't have to get worse. Like, if he can just replicate what he did last year now with JSN in there, we're going to be off and running. Like, this is going to get real fun, real fast. And for a team that was so good throwing the ball down the field last year, now they can have the counterpunch to that even more so than they did last year. Like, it's going to be so hard to cover this team in general defensively. And I think that, like, Geno legitimately, because of who he plays in his division, look at the Rams secondary, look at the Cardinals secondary, Buddy might get close to 5,000 passing yards this year if he plays well. Like, that's gonna get
Pete Carroll will have none of that. He will not allow it.
He could do it if they wanted him to. Now, granted, they also draft Zach Charbonnet, which does make you think, okay, maybe they are going to lean more on the running game again with him and Kenneth Walker. But he could do it if they want. Let me put that he could do it if he wanted to. I think he really could.
Yeah, he could. Yeah. I do think Pete Carroll would like just pull him off the field if he got close to it. He's like, I can't be. I can't have a 5,000 yard passer.
Yeah. But no, it's just, they're a fun team, man. And like, the defense still has question marks. We'll talk about it, but let me get just what's your overall thoughts on the team I talked enough about.
This is the team. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm willing to say it. This is the team I want to watch most on Red Zone. I think we're gonna see most on Red Zone just because they are going to be scoring a ton.
They should.
I don't think they did shit to fix their defense. Like, where I saw the problems in the defense, I don't know how much that was addressed because their defensive interior, they let a couple good players walk in Poona Ford and Al Woods. And now I know they were both kind of playing out of position, and that's why things looked a little ugly. And I expect them to reel the scheme back in to be a little bit better fit to these players, but their defensive interior, they bring on Jarron Reed, not a bad signing at all, but he's probably going to play like one a year. Like, you're still going to have Brian Moan out there playing nose tackle in your base defense. Like, who the fuck is Brian Moan? Who's Brian Moan?
I mean, he's also apparently injured at the moment, according to all that. So there's that.
All right. Maybe that's a good thing. But like, Draymond Jones, great addition, but
I like him a lot, but he doesn't solve that problem.
He doesn't solve your run defense problem. He's going to give you great pass rush juice, and it's going to help the fact that you don't have like super stout edges, but he's not going to like, he's going to play the same kind of role that Boye Mafe was collapsing into. Like, I don't know. Their defensive front, I don't think, is still going to fit the run all that well. And you bring in Bobby Wagner, but like, he's been teetering on the edge for a while now. I know he had
played
another
really
great
well
season
last year, actually, which is crazy to me.
It was mostly a surprise, but like, I don't know.
How long can
I
you ask him
think
to do
like
that? Yeah.
yeah, Devin Bush not a good player. You know that very well.
Oh man, when
Um,
they sign him, I'm like, good for you guys. Let's see what happens. I guess I don't know.
their secondary is exciting because I think Quandre Diggs might be the most underrated safety in the league.
He's
He's
really
so
good.
damn good. Like
He's really
he's so good.
good. Yeah.
I said I was watching that game earlier today. So in that game, there was in overtime, Baker had Van Jefferson like wide open for a touchdown, and Quandre Diggs come out of nowhere and picks that thing off, and he's just like waving it at the Rams sideline as he get like it was beautiful. I love Quandre Diggs.
There's
Um,
not many guys who just do the like flash out of nowhere thing better than him in the NFL right now. Like it's just you'll see nothing, right? Like you'll be like, oh, touchdown, and he just shows up. And you're like, were you at before the play started? Like what happened here?
yeah, like
It's funny.
he's just complete. He teleports places.
Yeah,
It's
it's
beautiful.
crazy. Yeah.
Jamal Adams coming back healthy, which
Mhm.
I don't love the player, but he's useful and he'll probably help your edge rush issue. Like
He
you can create some fun sim pressures with him.
yeah, the quasi safety
Your
edge
on
rusher
ball safety.
hybrid. So funny.
But
Yeah.
and then they signed Julian Love, who I think is a really really fun secondary player as well. So like
Yeah.
I love their secondary. I hate their front. I think they're gonna get run over, but they're just gonna be track meet games again, and it should
Yeah.
be a really really fun watch.
I think what it comes down to, like you said, with the defense, like I like the players they drafted overall. Derek Hall was a little.
I'm a Derek Hall fan. I
I know
wanted
you
him.
I know you like Derek Hall. To me, like I think he's a little too like one trick right now. So I don't know how
He
great he's
is.
going to be as a rookie, but he at least gives them something that they can ask him to do probably immediately and probably do
He'll
it
help
pretty
the run
well.
defense.
Right. So like I mean I think the pass rush is going to be pretty good. It's just again does it how
Really?
like I think it can be like Nwosu really played well last year overall. I think that Boye Mafe has to show up as a
He
set. Like
does.
his
I'm
talent
not
has
willing to
count
honor Daryl Taylor's 9.5 sacks as
I get it.
reality.
I
It's
get
not reality.
I understand. But like I think that especially Draymond Jones being brought into the interior too, I think that the pass rush could at least be good enough to like when you get into those shootouts, when the other team wants to throw the ball, it's not going to be easy for the quarterback to just sit there and make his reads, right? I think it's going to be good enough to be in that category. And then the secondary, like I said, is a lot of fun. If Tariq Woolen can play like he did last year and get a little bit more consistent in coverage, if Kobe Bryant could be a good nickel where he wasn't a great starter last year for them, but if he can be a good nickel, and then Devin Weatherspoon is a guy that like I'm excited to see play.
I love
Like
it. He's going to be so fun in that defense.
he's exactly, and I think that's what it comes down to: is can the defense be closer to like 18th instead of like 30th? Like if it can be closer to that, this team can win a lot of games, even more so than they did last year, because the offense is only going to be better unless Geno Smith falls off the cliff, which again I don't expect him to. It's not like he's like 38 and had a breakout. He's not even going to decline physically all of a sudden that much. Like it's just that's what it comes down to is like how good can the passing offense be with the addition of JSN, and then can the running game with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, if they can lean on that consistently when they want to. And again, Walker played great last year. Just got banged up a little bit. I think that might be part of why Charbonnet was brought in, more so than just to bring a different skill set, but also so Walker doesn't have to carry the ball 15, 20 times.
The Walker, the type of runner he is, he needs a guy who's going to just go hit
where
the hole he's supposed to hit. Like,
exactly. Like
he needs that compliment because he's a dancer.
Yes. He is, and like it works for him because he's an insane athlete. But like, what it comes down to is if you can get teams in a position where if you can get a touchdown lead on teams, and the defense can at least get that one stop that they need, you can wear teams down in the fourth quarter with this running back too. Like you can, especially like you put Charbonnet in for the whole drive, like just getting like 4, 5, 6 yards, and all of a sudden you throw Walker in. And it's the fourth, like, yeah, good luck trying to chase him down if he gets to see him. Like, forget about it. Like, there's just a lot of ways you can attack defenses with this offense. The defense just has to be okay. If it's just a couple ticks better in certain areas next year, you're talking about a team that's going to win double-digit games. That's what's going to happen. So, any other notes you want to throw on before we do predictions with them?
No. I think we really like the Seahawks are one of the easiest teams I think I've been able to evaluate.
Like we know what they're trying to do, what they did, what they're gonna do this year. Like we kind of know all of that with them.
Yeah, like it's the offense is going to be explosive. The defense has some weaknesses, but also some potential for like splash plays, like turnovers and stuff. Like this is going to be a good team, and it's going to be a fun team to watch. And yeah, their defense is going to be a little shaky, and that's part of the reason they're fun to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be like it's just the week to week variance. I think is going to be. I think that's the difference is there's going to be weeks where they're actually good this year. I think opposed to last year where it wasn't really happening very often, and that could be the difference between a couple wins that they could have had last year, like the Lions game, like the
yeah,
the crazy
yeah.
game.
Hope that one goes better this time. Week 2, so you get to
right,
find out
exactly.
real quick.
Yeah, so we'll find out. But so for me, I think that this is going to be a team that wins at least 9 games. Because I don't think they're going to be worse than last year. Like it would take a monumental collapse for the defense and Geno Smith just not being himself from last year, which again, like you don't want to always predict a guy that has a sudden breakout to do it again. But like with this offense, with how he fits, like you said, Tony, you even said like you expected him to be at least a good player in this offense, and he was an even better player than that. And I think that's going to continue.
Way better than I expected.
Yeah, considering the talent they've added, I don't see why it would get worse. So, and this could be a 12-13 win team in the NFC. I really think so. I think 12 is the ceiling I'd be most comfortable with, just because again you're playing the Niners in this division. Your schedule's not hard necessarily, but it's not super easy or anything. It's a second place schedule, so I think 12 is where I'll settle on as my ceiling for them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 12-win ceiling. I'm a little bit lower on the floor. I'd call it.
I get it because the variance with the defense, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I expect a drop off from Geno, but I'm not willing to like
assume he's not going to. Right, it's possible for sure.
And it might not even. I guess drop off in Geno isn't really what I'm thinking of as the failure point here. It's more so that he played the Mahomes-Allen style of football where he is threading needles downfield.
Yes, he was launching that thing last year.
If you're super into PFF terms, which nobody's into these terms, but like the turnover-worthy plays and big-time throws, like he was making a lot of big-time throws. He was also making a lot of turnover-worthy plays, which is like, that's how you get the big plays. That's why Allen and Mahomes do that.
Yeah.
But I think some of them could turn into turnovers, whereas last year they were frequently turning into touchdowns. The variance on that could hit. I'm only dropping the floor down to 8. I'm saying that they could be a game worse. But
honestly, I think that's part of why JSN is a Seahawk right now, because you won't I think you're going to open up opportunities for him to not have to make as many of those throws. Right? Like he'll be able to keep that part of his game, but they're not going to be required in order to get the passing game going, because so much of their big plays were like not just like run after catch or anything like that, because Tyler Lockett famously didn't want to get touched last year, which is, by the way, awesome. I have no problem with it whatsoever. If anybody has a problem with it, they just don't want to make money and play in the NFL a long time, because like that's what Tyler Lockett's trying to do.
Yeah, smart man knows what he's doing.
Yeah, good, because it's not like he wasn't super productive still. Like like whatever. And if there was open grass, he wasn't just falling down when there was like if there was people around him, he was going to get smashed. He just was like, I ain't doing that. I'm good. Like smart. But with JSN out of this mix, like you just won't have to have as many of those big plays hit to still be just as effective, if not more effective, right? It's just going to open those up probably even more. So I get it. That's definitely still possible, because if he tries too many of those and it doesn't hit this time, that's when you could have a couple games where he throws 2 or 3 picks and you lose. But it's going to be fun to see if they can replicate it and make it even better. But from like I already said, for me, that's like similar 9-8, 12-5. I'll say they should win 10 games. If they don't win 10 games, I'd be disappointed. That's what I'll say too. Like
agreed. I think I'm predicting them at 11. I'm not finalizing anything until I finalize it. But
like, if you don't win that many, I'm sad. Basically.
Yeah. That's like what you should do given how good the roster is at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. Now moving on to the big dogs, to the team that just always finds a way to just do insane stuff, and Kyle Shanahan, 49ers. Coming off an NFC Championship game appearance where they had exactly a half of a quarterback for most of the game. It was not going to – let's just get this out of the way too, because this is a big topic of conversation after that. The Niners were going to lose that game. They were going to. I'm sorry. I really think so. I don't think they win that game if Brock Purdy's healthy the entire time. The Eagles were just on a roll last year, and the
Eagles played bad football that day.
I do.
They could have been caught.
Done it. I don't think they would have happened. But regardless, I understand why the Niners are upset. They wanted to see. I would have loved to see that game obviously play out with a healthy quarterback for them. Really, any of them being healthy would have been nice, but none of them were. It was kind of insane. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it in a playoff game like that. But besides the point, that's how their season ended. But they're coming back even stronger, I would say, overall. Let's just start with strengths because this is the list of strengths is hilarious to me. Wide receiver, I would say, is a strength, of course. Edge, interior defensive line, linebacker, running back, tight
Are we
end.
calling? Are we calling edge a strength? How many competent edges do you need to have it be a strength? And how
For
good does that
me,
one edge
for
need to
me, if
be?
you have the defensive player of the year on one side and you have guys that I think can at least be quality number 2 and 3 types, which I think they do, I'll give you the T as a strength, at least compared to the rest of the league. And you got a
Right.
defensive player. I'll just say that. I'm not gonna if you want to put it in like the it's just good tier, I'm fine with that. But this list of strengths cracks me up. Like, and the only one like so I give them the benefit of the doubt with the offensive line. I don't love the overall talent on this line, but Trent Williams is on this line. Like that kind of give more so than most lines. Like having him as your top player, I think really matters more than just having one great player on other lines. It's kind of tough for me, but I still think they're kind of closer like the mid tier overall talent wise. And then the weaknesses, like maybe secondary, like Jimmy Ward's gone, which is actually pretty big for me because I think he's been really important for them. And corner's kind of a question mark for me, but it didn't matter last year really. And then I have to put quarterback, but it doesn't matter probably. Like,
Yeah,
and
I
this is the part of this team that's really hard, and we
almost don't have
talked
to
about it.
evaluate it
Yeah,
for
it's
this
like you
team.
don't really have to because like if Sam Darnold plays, he's probably going to be the best Sam Darnold we've ever seen by like a significant margin. If Brock Purdy plays, he's going to at least be good, I think, no matter what. And I'd love for Trey Lance to play, but I think Kyle Shannon's just like, yeah, man, listen, sorry I drafted you, but I actually don't want you to play for me. You're too good as an athlete and too talented, and that doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, too bad. But if he plays, he'll probably. I still think he'd be the best of any of them if he plays, but that's really doesn't matter to me or matter to Shanahan. So, um, yeah, what do you say, right, about about that situation?
Yeah, I truly like. There are 31 teams in the NFL where having the best quarterback possible is the most important thing for
Yes.
them, and then there's Kyle Shanahan,
Yeah.
and it no longer matters. And really interesting. Forget which podcast I heard it on. This
Mm-hmm.
is a couple months back, but somebody was trying to rank where Kyle Shanahan as your offensive coordinator ranks among quarterbacks. Like you want Mahomes, you want Burrow, you want Allen, you probably want Herbert. After that, is it Kyle Shanahan? Like the
Maybe,
consistency,
maybe.
the lack of constraints your
That's
offense
maybe
has to deal
Trevor
with at
because
that
of
point.
his second how he
Yeah, like
finished
his
last season.
trajectory, but
But
it's valid. He is a top 10 NFL quarterback without a doubt. His offense is going to be top 10, and it's a guarantee. It doesn't matter who's behind center. So I I don't care about their quarterback room. Like I think it's sufficient. I think it's exciting. It could even be elevating because of what we saw from Brock Purdy at the end of the year. And like I don't know, Sam Darnold's throw on the run has always been a really cool visual. If that
yeah, he's
turns
got
into
some of the
competent QB
cool.
play,
He's got some of the
like
coolest throws in the NFL since he's been in.
yeah, like
But
the
that's
angles
it.
he's able to get,
Yeah,
it's
like
fun. Where the ball ends up isn't fun, but maybe he captures that in San Francisco. But the skill positions, I think, the biggest strength on the team, like best skill position group in the NFL. I think this is why the quarterback doesn't matter. Kyle Shanahan alone, very very important, but we've seen him without this wide group of skills, and it's still not perfect. They can still lose a lot of games. So like the fact that Debo Samuel wasn't healthy most of last year, like what he can be. The offensive line is not a strength, but I would have said it was a weakness last year, and it turned out pretty good. So
it
who am
just
I to
works out.
judge?
It just works out.
Yeah,
They
like you
get
said, if
they
you
get
got Trent
certain
Williams
players.
and the rest are
Yeah.
serviceable, you're good.
They get types of players that fit the wide zone, and then that's all they care about. Like it doesn't matter; everything else can be figured out. That's what I think makes him special too. Is his offensive line? He's had really good offensive lines, right? Like obviously, but it isn't a prerequisite for this offense to work in the same way that it is for other teams, and that frustrates me as a team who doesn't have that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just, and I'll keep touching on some of the stuff. Like he has the perfect complement of skill sets at every position offensively. Brandon Ayuk is the true, like, in my opinion, he's the wide receiver one type for me. Like, I think he's that type of player. Debo Samuel is a freak in every possible way with the ball in his hands, running, catching, whatever you want him to do. Juwan Jennings is a big body slot blocker type who's awesome at what he does. He's not a necessarily great receiver, but he plays that role, which you see in Shanahan offenses all the time, about as well as anyone plays in the NFL. Obviously, you have George Kittle. When he's on and when he's used properly, one of the hardest people in the NFL to do anything to coverage-wise. Like, he just destroys people after the catch, especially. The quarterback, who cares? Christian McCaffrey. You go out and get a premium running back after kind of just taking third-round picks that don't play well for a long time. And then Elijah Mitchell's still here. Right. They just don't play. Elijah Mitchell, really good last year before he got hurt, and really just good in general as been the 49er. He's the backup running back. If Christian McCaffrey go down, it's not like their running game is all of a sudden screwed. Like that.
No, and Jordan Mason was awesome last year too.
Yeah, he was good. Again, like you put these, it doesn't matter. Like it's just like the wide zone when it's blocked well and you have the right players for it. Too bad.
I will say
back next week. Like
I see a name on their roster that if this guy plays on their offensive line, I take back everything I've said. It'll all collapse. Kyle Shanahan no longer matters.
Let me check real quick here if I'm thinking. Let's see.
It should be, I guess, obvious if you have followed the Bills closely.
Oh, Feliciano.
Yeah, it's Feliciano. That dude is I think he's probably the worst guard in the NFL, worst guard center hybrid in the NFL at this point. Like I can't understand why he's getting signed places. He's a locker room cancer most of the time too. So like,
being a veteran, I guess, matters sometimes. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know about that.
I'm hoping he doesn't either because Brendel has actually been pretty good for them. I think honestly.
Yeah, I think, and like Spencer Burford last year wasn't great, but he was sufficient.
He got it done.
I know they're anticipating Colton McKivitz taking over right tackle because McGlinchey's gone, which is a projection, but every time they do this, it kind of works.
It does.
So like,
also like McGlinchey, he's really good run blocker, but you can't like he wasn't protecting anything.
Oh yeah, no, he was not.
Like, and that's why like the Broncos, man, like, whatever. We'll get to them next week.
Yeah, and one strength I wanted to call out because I have it as a strength. You did not. I think their cornerback room is really good. I don't think it's deep. I think they have two really good players, one of whom is like a recent signing. So like Charvarius Ward last year, I thought was incredible. I thought he was a good corner, and then he got there and he was an elite corner almost. Like it was incredible. And then Isaiah Oliver, I think, is an absolute stud. He might be best in the slot.
He's listed as best back right now.
Okay. So like, good.
And that's what I
play him in his best position.
Yeah, that's what I want. Like, to play. Yeah.
But I think he's really, really good. And then Diamond Lenore, I know he like as rookies and young guys do, he gets picked on, but I think he put something together at the end of the year. Like if he has potential, if he hits the ground running again, like I think you have three really good cornerbacks. And then we know the safety room. Taylor Noah is just so good, and I mean, fill in the blank elsewhere. They drafted Jair Brown really high. I'm interested to see if he'll play immediately to replace Jimmy Ward.
The problem is I just don't think he's remotely that type of player. I think right now Tayshaun Gibson's actually the starting free safety as of this moment. And like he's played a whole lot. That's all I'll say.
He has.
It's tough. Like I think the secondary definitely has potential. I just think that of the positions that they could look at that could end up being a weakness for them, that's going to be where it comes from as a secondary, not anywhere in the front seven, which granted, that's mostly because the front seven being really good and not necessarily because the secondary is bad. Like it's just going to be, if for some reason, let's say the pass rush doesn't really hit home much. Let's say someone gets hurt, like a Hargrave gets hurt, or God forbid Nick Bosa gets hurt. And then you're talking about like, okay, who's the pass rushers for this team? That's when you might worry about a little bit. But if that doesn't happen, they should be just fine pretty much regardless, just because of that. And plus, you got good old Fred Warner patrolling the middle of the field.
Yeah, the fact that they lost a like top 15 NFL linebacker in free agency and still have two top 10 NFL
like,
linebackers,
Dre Greenlaw
like what the
is
hell?
Awesome. So like, who cares? Like, you know,
that was Aziz Al-Shaair was awesome, and it's a loss, but you still have two studs, and Oren Burks has played well in reserve.
You don't need more
than
like, two. So yeah, it's a stacked roster. Let's just say it it's a stacked roster.
I do have my concerns with the edge room. I really like.
I get
Drake
it. Yeah.
Drake Jackson, I am excited for. I know
I
the
did
team
like
is
him.
excited for.
That's one of the reasons why I like him, because I really did like him coming out too.
He can just in 1 or 2 weeks completely change my mind about how I view this group if he just starts out strong.
Yeah.
But Clelin Ferrell, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. I think this is the spot it would happen.
Yeah.
But I won't believe it until I see it.
Yeah.
And then Austin Bryant, I feel nothing about.
I think that's fair.
He does not evoke emotions out of me.
Right, that's fair. At least he's not evoking negative emotions, right? I guess there's that.
Is it better to be
have
no emotion? Like
yeah.
Don't they say indifference is the opposite of love? Like I'm sorry, Austin Bryant, it's not working.
That's fair, maybe, yeah. No, but I get it. Like the depth is definitely questionable. I'd like to see, like, I would love like them to add like somebody to that group just as like a depth player. Like we've said his name about 70 times so far, but Justin Houston is still out there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Unless I missed that. Like, hey, come on over, bud. Why not? This is gonna be one of your 4 at least best opportunities to win something. Like, go ahead, let's do it. But no, I do understand that. But that front four as a healthy front four is
it's absurd.
Scary. That's tough. Javon Hargrave, listen, I know they paid him a whole lot of money, deservedly so, but when I saw that, I'm like, oh boy, that's not good if you're the NFC. Like that's not good. That's
tough. Is crazy. Like, think about the path that their D tackle position has taken, because they trade DeForest Buckner because they're like, we can't pay so many defensive linemen so much money. Let's trade DeForest Buckner and use that pick on a D tackle to just 1-for-1 replace him, and then that guy sucked, and then they still ended up spending $21 million per year on the D tackle, but at least they have it. They have it now.
It's tough. Like, I do feel bad because like Kinlaw I did think was going to have potential as a pass rusher, but just hasn't happened. And maybe now that he won't be asked to play a full-time role, maybe he can get something going. But yeah, that was pretty much like, you hope it goes better for the Titans, but it's similar to the Titans being like, we don't want to pay a receiver however much money per year. Let's just go draft Traylon Burks and use that. Like, you hope that works out better for them, but like same idea of like, let's just go 1-for-1. It's like, I don't know.
I don't think it works that often. It worked for the Vikings, and now everybody's going to try to replicate it. They're like, they traded away Stephon Diggs and used that pick on Justin Jefferson.
And even that's only because the NFL was too dumb to take him before they could take him. Even that.
Yeah, we all saw the video of them laughing at the Eagles draft room.
Literally the one, like, the mistake in my mind that I think of most with the Eagles is that, and it's like, it didn't really matter at the end of the day, hopefully for them. Like, they're still great, but like, that's the one thing I'm like, man, Jalen Reagor, you took him. I even had friends like, Jalen Reagor is so fun. I'm like, but he's not a receiver. I don't think
they spent a 2 on JJ Arcega-Whiteside the year before too. They were swinging and they were missing often.
Yeah,
and then they finally were like, all right, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown.
We're drafting AJ, or we're taking AJ Brown off the Titans. I don't care. We're not going to crapshoot anymore. No, but yeah, like I said, overall, this team it's going to be at least as strong as last year. Talent wise for sure. And it really comes down to like, is Brock Purdy, if he's the starter, which it seems like that's going to be the plan, right? If he's the starter, can he replicate the level of play he played at last year? Because let's be honest, watching the games and looking at the stat sheet are two different things. He, to me at least, did not look like a player that was putting up the stats he's putting up just watching him play. But in this scheme, he doesn't have to play any better than he did last year. He does not have to be any more accurate. He does not have to be any more of a playmaker than he already was last year. Like, the one thing that he does bring them that, again, you thought you were getting from Trey Lance, or you should be getting from him, but they're clearly not interested, is the playmaking aspect, right? It's the ability to win. The offense occasionally doesn't have the perfect play drawn up, or when there's someone isn't open. Can you go out there and make something happen? And he does have that capability. I don't want to take that away from him, but it's just you can't look at what he did last year on film and say, this guy is actually a great quarterback or anything like that. This is a guy who's made it work in the system, and you just kind of hope that he can keep doing that for however long they ask him to do it.
Yeah, my biggest concern with Purdy, because I think that the system stuff he can go in and do. Like, he's got the quick trigger, he's got quick. Like, I think
he can execute this offense.
He's very good at operating the offense, and the reason they were undefeated with him until he got injured was because when plays broke down, Jimmy would take sacks or throw it to a linebacker.
Yes.
When plays broke down,
specifically a linebacker.
Cover one robber, baby. Run it back every single time.
He loves it. No,
But
yeah.
when plays would break down, Purdy would escape and he would buy himself like 5-6 seconds and then find George Kittle with 20 yards of separation because
Yes.
the play broke down and he bought time. That's some Russell Wilson shit. Nobody buys 5 seconds of time and
No.
succeeds
Traditionally.
time and
Yeah.
time and time again, especially when the offense is designed around timing. Like,
Yeah, it
this is the
doesn't work
offense
that
that
way.
is
Yeah.
most susceptible to breaking because of that stuff. So, like, that's, I think, why Shanahan and Trey Lance haven't gotten along great and why things fell out with RG3. Other than the injuries, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's because these guys are so good that they do it too often for Kyle's liking. And so, like,
So
does
funny.
does Purdy start to hurt himself? Do the rose-colored glasses like fall off? And Shanahan's just like, this guy's screwing up my plays every 3 plays, and like it worked that one year, but now it's not. So there's a chance that things can get ugly with Purdy still.
It's totally possible. And like the last thing I'll say about this team before we get into predictions and finish up here, it's so funny that we talked about it already. The only team in the NFL whose quarterback talent being talented is a detriment to their team in the eyes of the offensive coordinator and the head coach is the 49ers. Like literally, I think there's only a few quarterbacks in the NFL that are at the top that I think that Kyle Shanahan would actually like the way that they play. And it's so funny to me that he doesn't like the fact that Trey Lance, like you said, is talented, or that Brock Purdy is talented at evading sacks and making like it's funny that he actually doesn't want it. Like he doesn't want the talent. He wants the guy that points and clicks.
If
And I
they are too
understand,
talented,
but
there's a risk of them not doing what
not
the play
doing
asks of them.
exactly. And it's like Kyle Shanahan is basically a point and click game personified as a person. He's like, I want you to do this at this time, and if you don't do it, you're wrong. And it's like I get it, it works, but I just can't help but think about like if he just allowed his quarterbacks to elevate this offense. And I understand like you don't want them to do the wrong thing too many times. You don't want them to not take what they're given. But it doesn't, as good as he is, the offense isn't always perfect. It's not like every single play is for the taking and they just sometimes don't do it. Like there's times where the play breaks down. There's times where there's an issue. There's times where whatever, like a guy doesn't get open or a coverage busts, but in a way that doesn't even actually help. Like stuff happens, and you ideally want your guy to be able to make something happen there. And Purdy did it last year, but like you said, if he does it too much, if he makes it part of his game too much, is Kyle gonna be like, Sam, listen, will you point and click for me, bud? Or what? Like, will that happen? Maybe. I don't know. I think you'd probably have to get some turnovers from it and stuff like that for him to actually like pull the plug or something. But Purdy doesn't have a very strong arm. Those balls could start to flutter and they could start to come out weird, and you could get some picks to go the other way. So we'll see. I still think that they have an unbelievably high floor because of who the head coach is, but it's a question to see how long the starter actually stays in place, whoever it ends up being.
Yeah. I will say I just saw some very exciting breaking news that we will share after our predictions. But
Okay. Maybe. Okay. I'll let you. Yeah, you go ahead first. What's your prediction?
So, San Francisco 49ers, as we've said, they're a wagon. We expect them to be no worse than last year, probably better, just because they're hopefully not cycling through 5 to 10 quarterbacks. I think that their ceiling is 14 wins. That's my stamp of I think this team can win the Super Bowl, but I'm not willing to say that their ceiling is 17 wins. So I think they can get there. I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL for sure. I think I am a little bit worried about defensive regression. We didn't really touch on DeMeco Ryans leaving. I think they'll be able to, like Steve Wilkes coming on makes a lot of those fears go away. But there is change there. We're used to them having an insanely good defense to support the question marks, but I still think they can get to 14 games. Their floor, I call 10 wins. Like maybe if the quarterback play really gets close to like the really poor levels and there's a couple injuries, then 10 wins.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Like I think 10 wins is the floor because again, even looking at some of their really rough years, like a lot of that was because they didn't have the roster talent to make up for when the quarterback was hurt or played bad, right? Now that's not really the case. I think you can get away with the quarterback position being an issue in this offense specifically, and still coming away with some wins that you probably shouldn't have otherwise. I do wonder, like, for me, if Brock Purdy plays just as good as he did last year, we expect them to be in that 14 win category. But if the turnovers start coming, which with the way he plays, his accuracy was definitely iffy at times last year. It just didn't matter because he had 10 yards of separation a lot of the time in some of the plays he was making. But if some of those balls go the other way, kind of similar to Geno, where we were saying like the offense should be really good, but like if some of those throws go the other way, it could lead to some regression offensively, and you could start to see them really trying to have like not an identity crisis, but trying to figure out, okay, who is the best quarterback for this team? Like, is it Sam Darnold? God forbid. Is it Trey Lance, which I hope is who they go to in that situation, but we'll see. Like, it's just the potential is there because there's so much unknown still with Purdy specifically that he could regress a lot, even in this game. So I'll say 10 wins is the floor, and I do agree 14 wins is definitely on the cards. Like the NFC, just outside of a few teams, just doesn't have a lot of heavy hitters.
Yeah,
and I think
it's
that's
a path. It's
for
like
it.
just
Like,
a nice, easy path.
it's just so much easier to get to that. Like that's why I struggle to predict a 14-win team in the AFC. Not because there aren't teams that are totally good enough to win 14 games. It's just there's so many teams they have to be able to beat on the way to that it becomes hard to predict. But the potential is there with the Niners. I think it's totally reasonable to expect at least 12 wins. I think that's the target win for them. Like if they don't win 12 games, I would be surprised unless there's a lot of injuries or something.
Yeah, I was struggling because, like, so yeah, the range I'm saying 10 to 14, and where am I actually going to predict? I was thinking 11 initially just because I do have those, like, defensive concerns.
Yes,
but
yeah.
12 wins makes more sense to me just looking at their schedule. And, like, there's just
Right.
not a lot of teams out there that I'm like,
just,
oh, yeah, they could do it.
And like they can lose to some of the other big teams in NFC and like close games and still get to that 12 wins. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
That really gets me. Let me put it this way: I would be disappointed if a mostly healthy Niners team won less than 12 games. Like I think that's what their fans should expect too. So
yeah, definitely.
You wanna throw out the news that was reported here, Tony?
Yeah. So obviously just came out. Don't have a ton of opinions generated because I just saw it 3 minutes ago. But the Titans are giving wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins a 2-year, $26 million deal worth up to $32 million with incentives per Ian Rappaport. That's the age-old debate of will the aging star take money or chase a ring? It's always the money. It's always the money. It is always the money. He could have gone to the Chiefs. Now, I wanted him to go to the Bills. I think the Chiefs made so much more sense that I'm going to speak about the Chiefs here because it makes a better argument. But he could have gone to the Chiefs. Maybe he gets half of that.
Yeah.
But him on the Chiefs, yeah, like that's a Super Bowl. He's not giving himself any chance to compete here. It's funny when the guys always say like they're nodding their head to the quarterbacks they want to play with. They're saying they still want to win. But J.J. Watt went to the Cardinals that one offseason. DeAndre Hopkins coming to the Titans. They all say they want to win, but money wins at the end of the day.
Money talks. I think for DeAndre, this is obviously a money move. I will say it does. The Titans are no longer the worst skill group in the NFL, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Which is nice for them. I know that they're not trying to necessarily at this point. I don't think they're going all in or anything like that. But I think they wanted to have somebody that they could lean on other than Traylon Burks. I think it's really important for him to not be the number one receiver, right?
Yes,
like especially for his ability to develop and at a pace that's fair to him for a player that's like him. So this helps. It does help the Titans to do this. I think that even though it's a move that's really more of a win now move in a lot of ways, it's still not necessarily a move that like if they don't win, it's not a bad move. Then you know what I'm saying. Like I think that this gives them a higher floor offensively and allows them to try to build out a passing game that by the end of the year, depending on how Tannehill plays, maybe you do get to see Will Levis at some point and kind of transition into him being the quarterback. And if Hopkins sticks around for next year as well on that 2-year deal, you have a true wide receiver one for your young quarterback then for at least a year. So it makes sense for the Titans to a certain degree. And again, if Hopkins wanted money, he got his money. It's still not as much money as other top receivers, obviously, but you're not going to get that in the situation with, when he was let go and everything else. So I would have wanted to see him on as contender, admittedly, selfishly.
But I'm very happy he's not a Chief. Let me make that
Yeah,
clear.
I'm sure you. I mean, I'm for
I
me,
was
like I care, but not that much because I'm not.
I was fully resigned to the idea that in like mid-August my
He was
season would
gonna,
be
yeah,
ruined by
right. He was gonna
hearing he
be
was going to
over.
be a Chief. So this is
Yeah,
great news to me.
yeah. I think if you're a Titans fan too, like this at least, like again, this offense should be more watchable than it would have been. So that's good for them. But again, this is really just Hopkins getting 32, well, possibly 32 million more dollars in his bank account. Which again, will I blame him for that? No. Would I liked him again to go to a team that he could help win a Super Bowl? Yeah, but that's the fan talking and not so much the man, right? So if I was
Yeah,
offered $26 million, I'd be like, yeah, sure, yeah.
and like I don't think the Titans are going to be good, but we did say during our show like their top end
They're
outcome because of Vrabel is
and yeah,
higher than we'd all expect, and adding
yes.
this type of player, I would hate this. I would hate this. I would hate this. I would hate this. But I could see a world where they still win the division just because
If
the
the
Jags take a
Jaguars
step
don't take
back
the step
and
that we
all it
all
takes
expect
is
them to
like a
make,
10-6-1 record or something. Like
yeah, I won't count them out. I won't. This only
no.
helps them in that endeavor, which I
I
think
still
is why
predict
they
them to
do it.
finish
But
second and
right,
with a margin. Like there's not really fear for Jacksonville, but
right,
I could see the outcome. Like
yeah.
I could see it.
All Vrabel's got to do is pull his crap a couple times, and as someone who knows that magic, how it works, it's always possible. Don't count
Yes.
it out.
Yeah,
But
there
no,
are just coaches that are like that, and
they're just like
you have one of them.
they take advantage of teams sometimes. They just are like, oh, you don't know. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
just don't know. It's funny. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but yeah, definitely a fun move there. We'll see what Hopkins can do. Still a great player. Was great last year when he was playing. So definitely expecting him to still be good. But that'll do it for us this week. Next week we will be back with the AFC West. Speaking of the Chiefs, we'll talk about them, and then we're on to the last two after that. Tony, we're going to get to you guys' division. Hopefully Zach is not at the beach when we do that, but we'll see how that goes. But like I said, that'll do it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.